Right, welcome back, everybody. So, as the country commemorated Workers' Day over the weekend, President Cyril Ramaphosa has conceded that government's repriorisation of its spending due to poor economic activity has affected its ability to deal with the public sector wage negotiations. This as talks between government and unions representing employees in the public sector ended in a deadlock last month. So what's happening is that unions are demanding a 7% hike, but government is offering a 0% increase, saying it has no money for salary increases. The unions further say that government cannot blame the coronavirus outbreak for its inability to honour its previously agreed upon multi-year wage agreement. We are now joined by the Federation of Unions of South Africa, that's FEDUSA's General Secretary, Riefdah Ajam, the President of the National Council of Trade Unions, that's NACTU, Patrick Mphela, as well as Cosatu First Deputy President, Mike Shingange. Good to have all three of you joining us here on the programme, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you very much. And,
Good
morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much to all of you again. All right, let me begin just starting off with you, Riefdah. Where did this year's Workers' Day find the unions? I mean, what was the sense amongst your workers on this day this year?
Leeanne, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. Workers have continued for the second time in a row to observe the protocols to ensure that we do not in any such way allow for a third wave to occur. And as such, we have conformed to the protocols in terms of social distancing and maintaining all other non-pharmaceutical protocols. And in that regard, we have had mostly virtual connectivity. And from our side, in commemorating the hard-won victories that workers have long fought for over the years, we as FEDUSA have started off the process of a groundbreaking launch of a digital app that will allow workers to continue to communicate with one another, continue to advocate, educate and agitate in this process of not only a digitized world, but equally so to ensure that we can advance the ambitions amidst protecting the protocols, advancing the interests, and at the same time ensuring that we are ready and capable to engage in a new digital fourth industrial revolutionized world.
Yeah, so I mean, I gather that that's very much so for all the other unions as well. So I won't pose the same questions to you, Pat and Mike, but I think what I want to get a sense from you, Mike, I'll come to you. What is the sense within the workers? Because obviously it's the reality is that at the moment when it comes to workers' salary increases, the negotiations that are currently happening, everything's at a deadlock right now. And I can imagine within a lot of the workers, there's not this optimistic sense right now. So perhaps you can explain to us, Mike, I come to you. What are workers feeling like as we leave Workers' Day behind us and we come back to the reality of where they're sitting right now in terms of negotiations?
No, yes, thank you very much, Leeanne. Indeed, workers are very despondent at the moment. You'll know that as you celebrate Workers' Month, starting from the 1st of May, it is a day that it's a result of struggle of workers for it to be a paid holiday. It recognizes and celebrates the struggles and the victories that were scored by workers in the past and the challenges that were there before, but also it takes stock of the challenges currently we're facing. But I must say that this year, despite the fact that the workers could not meet in their thousands in the rallies, but there was very little indeed to celebrate, given the fact that a number of them have been retrenched this year. A number of them have actually taken a salary cuts and have lost their income. There's no protection at all. They are finding themselves working in an unsafe environment. But like we are saying, that across the sectors of the economy, the workers are very afraid that their rights to earn a living, their right to protest freely, their right to have collective bargaining has been threatened across the sectors because government have taken a political decision to challenge the constitutionality of the collective bargaining. They took it to court. They've asked the judges to declare it unconstitutional. When the unions appealed, after the judges agreed with them, the matter is now in the Constitutional Court. Now, the workers are celebrating the Workers' Month, waiting to hear whether the Constitutional Court is going to agree with government that which the workers have believed for 27 years, that they've got the right to collective bargain. It is in fact, in the eyes of our government, unconstitutional. That's why the government is in court. They know that they may have to start afresh after that Constitutional Court judgment to fight for the right to collective bargaining, a right which those who came before them have fought and have won it. And that's why we know that it has been enacted in the Labour Relations Act and the Constitution. So workers are very anxious currently, very demoralized and very despondent. So there was very little to celebrate. However, it was important for workers to observe the day, because for as long as these demands of the 8-hour working day and a 40-hour working week, these demands for the maternity leave, which are now under threat from the government, they want to take them away. The need for a May Day shall always be there for the workers to use that day to express their demands and their views going forward.
Yeah. So let's have a look at the makeup of the public sector. I mean, just a couple of numbers that we look at, so which I think is common knowledge, but it's good to just see what government is saying, because they've used the statement saying that there is a bloated civil service and a weak economy. So we're looking at the amount of public servants at the moment. 1.3 million is the number. The wage bill for public servants expected for the 2021-22 year is 650.4 billion rand. That's the amount of numbers that we are looking at right now. I mean, this makes up about 32% of government's total spend. It's a lot of money. It is very heavy at this point in time. I come to you, Pat, as a person who participates in the bargaining council. How possible are the expectations of trade unions from the government? And the demands that we are told and that what we're looking at right now is the expectation of around about approximately an 8% increase is what the unions are looking for from government, but they just can't find this anywhere. Talk to us about how do you expect this to happen?
Thank you, Leeanne, and to the viewers. Firstly, as NACTU, wish to commend and congratulate our workers, especially the frontline workers, who took us through the pandemic without any artillery, without any PPEs, and they are still keeping us afloat. Coming to the question, yes, look, as long as the government is borrowing from the World Bank and the IMF, those funds come with conditions, and the conditions are such that you're going to freeze your vacancies. You are also having to have to cut staff. But again, it is unfair for the government, the state as employer, to come and table a 0% offer. How uncaring will that be? You see, we have an uncaring government because the workers themselves, especially the frontline workers, have worked through this pandemic without a token of appreciation. You know, we negotiated there to try and say, look, for the workers, out of this 500 million, why couldn't they do something about it? But instead, the workers' taxes are paying our leaders, but they still steal. I mean, how do they loot what they should also be given to the workers? But also, the more a state as employer should be creating more jobs and as well create a tax base. But for us, we know that the government has got money. And the pretext that they are willing to pay, but they are incapable to pay, they are setting a very, very wrong precedent, washing away the gains which we had from 1994. You see, also to put it into context is that, as my colleagues have, my comrades have already alluded to, you're washing away all the gains that we had. And for us, we know that the government has got to get that money. They were able to borrow even through the pandemic, and we don't even know where they did with that 500 million.
Yeah. So let me just keep the conversation moving. We hear your points, Pat, but let me just move on to Riefdah very quickly. Mike, I'll come back to you as well. We hear from you that it's as Pat said, it's an uncaring government, and unfortunately, we have seen frontline workers going out, working during this pandemic, sometimes not even having the PPE. And that's just, these I'm just talking to the medical staff. And obviously, there have been many other public service workers that have been going out and doing their work. But it's not only the public servants that have been doing this. We've seen everybody doing as much as they can under these circumstances. But the reality is that, do you think it's fair, Riefdah, to be asking for consumer price inflation plus 4% in a time like this where we're in very tough financial times? Is it fair to be demanding this kind of an increase in the environment we're in?
Then I'm going to put on my hat as a shop steward for now, and I'm going to beg your indulgence on the matter. Let us reverse the question just a little bit in this context, and let us ask whether it was fair during the context of COVID-19, during the hard lockdown, during 2020, when workers, frontline workers in particular, were subjected to not only anxiety of facing a pandemic that nobody knew anything about. Everybody went in there blindly, trying to determine, trying to manage, trying to control. Yet frontline workers, as honourable as they are to their badges and to the oaths that they've taken, they had to go in. They had to save lives, and they were the ones who had to balance that livelihoods that everybody was talking about, that narrative that was continued to be pushed. So was it fair for frontline workers to not receive their salary increases on the 1st of April 2020, when they once again were not forced to, but they upheld that oath once again, and they went back and they saved the lives of comrades, they saved the lives of your and my brothers, sisters, mothers, and else how. They had no choice in the matter. They had to continue to toe the front line to ensure that South Africa's response to this pandemic could be put in place. So now, 1 year later, we are at the same coalface. No increases have been received, and we have started the collective bargaining season afresh. So it is unjustifiable, if I come back to the original context of the question, that government had in June 2018, explicitly on the 8th of June 2018, signalled an intent that they had the money, that they had the confidence of the South African public, that they would be able to extend those increases. Now, it cannot be correct in the context of the discussions that we are asking whether or not the increase that we are asking for is justifiable, because at the end of the day, if you take into account the inflationary increases in food and fuel in particular, albeit Eskom coming into the equation with the beyond inflationary increases in the cost of electricity, it essentially displays a devaluing of the disposable income that public servants have here. So it is not justifiable in any context, Leeanne, that there's an expectation that public servants have to toe the front lines, have to ensure that they manage the process, but they are shown the hand by government. So it devalues absolutely every spirit of collective bargaining, and as such, it sets a terrible precedent for all other sectors in terms of where we are going. So the question is simply not justifiable in terms of whether the increase is affordable, whether the increase is correct, because at the end of the day, they too had to continue to have expenses at the end of the day whilst we were preserving and observing the lockdown protocols. So this is not, a very good context from which to start considering all other factors. And once again, and my apologies for belaboring the point here now, but when we started off with a hard lockdown and public servants did not receive their increases, once again, the unions had to jump in, including the federations, to save those public servants when government itself had not had any form of PPEs in place, and we had to hold them accountable in terms of ensuring that those could be in place. So there are many factors that we take into account when we respond to that question. So it is simply not an honest response in terms of government continually pleading poverty in this instance.
All right. I mean, Riefdah, I think you outlining it perfectly from the union side and from your members' side and how things are working. I want to get an update from you, but I won't be able to do it now. I'm going to just steal a few minutes after the news at 8 o'clock, and hopefully we can get an update as to what's happening, because I know it was FEDUSA that actually went to the Constitutional Court for reneging on that 2018 NEDLAC wage agreement. So I'm going to get a response from you there. Mike, I'm also going to come to you. I'm not sure if I can get a quick answer out of you, but, some of the demands made by workers' unions, for example, the South African Municipal Workers' Union, that's SAMWU, wanting a 4,000 Rand increase across the board, 15,000 Rand sectoral minimum wage, and a 3,500 Rand housing allowance for all workers. I mean, do you think this is possible? Because I know there's a deadlock right now, but do you think that this is achievable in this environment?
Look, I would like to expand further to what Comrade Riefdah said, that I'm glad you asked the question in the manner that you have asked it about the consumer price index plus 4%, because there's a narrative that workers are demanding a 7%. And I'm also quite hip about how some municipal workers union is approaching this thing, because they now want to talk about rents and cents instead of percentage. Because when you combine the consumer price index plus the 4%, it looks like the workers are asking for 7% increase, which is not true. In fact, they're asking for a 4% increase, because a 4%, the 3% is a consumer price index, which actually balances the buying power in terms of the things that are expensive now. You must remember that the workers last year, as Comrade Riefdah was saying, have actually taken a 4.2% salary cut, because the inflation in 2020 was 4.2%. The workers were supposed to get that plus 1%. So as things will stand, the workers are more than 5% less in terms of their earning capacity. So that's what workers are asking. But perhaps let's also raise the fact
Mike, I'm going to pause you. Mike, I apologize. We have to quickly take a break, but we are going to continue this conversation once we resume on SABC News. So stay where you are. We will get this to you, but we need to take this very quick break. So we'll be back in a short while.